to someone else, and that's the heartburn that we have over incorporating that concept into our ground rules. And it wasn't in the ground rules last time either. So
I wasn't part of that, but I believe it just was assumed. I guess too is the concern just, I know you're talking about putting in a third party's hand, but then what if we can't come to an impasse? We just keep beating our heads against the wall, or we bring somebody in to kind of help us finish it.
what if, and I'm going to speak a little bit out of turn here, so Courtney will kick me under the table if appropriate. What if we talked about a mediation process at some point in the event that we were unable to get this done on our own? Would you be open to something like that instead of this fact-finding commission?
You mind if we
Of course.
take a quick
Yeah. Yep,
Sure.
of course.
How long do you want?
Okay, great.
that letter A on our the schedule of negotiations. I'll show you what you make my chicken scrub.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that movement on that. Can I make just a further suggestion? It's a little technical, but can we just simply agree that we will here's what I'm start over. Rather than submit unresolved issues to the mutually agreed upon mediator, can we just agree to mediate with a mutually agreed upon mediator?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Want us to put a clean copy together and send it over?
That would be great. Let me oh, right. No, thank you. Good catch. That was the other one that we talked about. Yeah, I think we should. I mean, I have a couple of other things I want to run by you, and then once we have agreement across the table, we can write it up on a, you can modify your draft on another caucus or something so that we use time efficiently. So two other things that we want to talk about. One is under the public meeting compliance. So sub C, certainly appreciate the movement there. I'd like to pull in the language that we had in our draft that would expressly note that these meetings will be, in addition to electronically or verbatim recorded, live streamed and available to the public on the city's website in accordance with the city's public meeting policy.
So the live streaming,
Live streaming,
Zoom link.
correct. Yeah. So, the same as if, I mean, we have to give notice of the meetings, the same as if somebody decided to show up today and sit in the room with us and observe. And then Ryan and I talked about this a little bit, but we had some language in our proposal under sub D about allowing the use of software to generate meeting notes, and that we would agree to provide copies of those notes to you. So we'd like to incorporate that as well. And then the other thing that I think I flagged, Ryan, was under negotiating team members sub B. The city of Boise shall have an equal number of negotiators, one of whom should be a formal decision maker, city council or mayor, city council or mayor.
Yeah, we're fine striking that.
Yeah. Okay, great. I just didn't think we were going to get the entire city council to come sit in here with us. Okay, so if we have agreement on those, then I'm comfortable going ahead and noting that agreement here. If you'll make any those modifications, when you have a chance, and then we can sign those later on in the day.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, do you have anything else preliminary in nature that you want to go through? I mean, I think we're squared away on the ground rules. We're prepared today to open with some background and some sort of general information in terms of just to help you understand how the city's looking at things. So we'd like to start with that.
Got it.
Okay. Shall I go retrieve them?
I can get it. Okay. Stacey, if you could just introduce yourself to the table.
Certainly. My name is Stacy Doty. I oversee human resources for the city of Boise. And I've been with the city for about 7 months. Previous to coming here, I worked for different organizations, have about 25 years of experience with benefit design programs of all varieties. And so stepping into this role, really kind of understanding the trusts, the benefit design, the plans, and how they perform.
Cool. Eric, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning. My name is Eric Lamoria. I'm a finance director here at the city of Boise. I've worked for the city approximately 10 years, about 24 years in municipal government. Nice to see you.
Thanks. Go for it.
Okay. Are we bringing up a presentation?
You just click slideshow up top. You're so close. There you go. Just from the beginning.
Top left.
It's like the only.
Down.
Down.
Right there.
Oh my God. It's so funny. No, I'm John. I'm John, sorry.
I'm just so, I knew how to.
Me too.
Excellent. Okay. So Eric and I are here today to share some background and answer questions you might have as we talk about the future of the trust. So we're gonna go through all of these aspects and happy to answer any questions or clarify as we go. All right.
Sharing it on.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
No, we're good.
Can you fix it?
Yeah.
Again, I did the only thing. That's the.
Oh, here. Let me. Yeah, there you go. Sorry, guys.
So we got a full screen here, and we got a share for here. And where is the slide deck? It's
That
oh
one.
yeah, and then we gotta go back screen. And then we go back into Zoom and we share. It must be that. And share. And now we gotta back over. And there we are in the upper right hand corners.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you minimize that?
I'm sorry.
Can we,
Oh, yeah.
You
don't wanna watch
for that
yourself?
Presentation.
Is that your thing?
Put that in the upper left so you can drag. Yep. Or you can go.
Okay, so already introduced myself. So since stepping into this role at the beginning of the year, I really have been excited and impressed with how the city cares for its employees through both of these trusts, how they contribute to the trust and the overall benefit design. Really remarkable, competitive, robust design plans here. So that's very exciting. The Boise Fire and Police Healthcare Trust, established 2011, covers active, retired, sworn command staff public safety employees. The trust is solely responsible for the plan, the program, the administration, and the benefits. The city is solely responsible for contributing to that trust. Oops, sorry, thanks. Keep me honest here. You can, all right. So, we're going to talk about the three mechanisms by which the city contributes or funds the trust. But we're going to start with really talking about how it's performing today, how the trust, how the benefit, the design, the plan, how it compares. So we'll start there and then we'll come back around to the components of funding. So as I stepped into this role, one of the best practices that any organization is going to have is a way to assess, compare, analyze, how are we performing? How do we compare with other similar organizations, other similar populations? And it was really great to see that we had already partnered with a nationally recognized actuarial and benefits consulting firm, Milliman. You may or may not be familiar with them. They're very well known. In terms of really assessing our competitiveness for the city overall, for the general population, and also for specifically fire and police. So two very separate components of comparison that were done through this benchmark comparison. Sorry, I got lost in my presentation here. So this analysis incorporates national, regional, local data for general employees, as I said, and specific for fire and police. And overall, the Milliman analysis shows that the city of Boise is really doing an outstanding job caring for employees through its benefits offering. So one remarkable to see such great design, implementation, and performance of these plans. And I really do want to congratulate the Public Safety Health Trust on a truly excellent benefit design strategy that really is top tier. Notably, you see medical and prescription benefit falling in the top 3% of all plans for fire and police. And that's just not something you see very often. That is when I saw that initially with the overall benchmarking, I was really impressed with how we are caring for our fire and police in that respect. Everything was benchmarked from paid time off, medical and prescription drug, dental and vision, retirement, disability, life insurance, and so forth. And all of them were very, very competitive overall. So congratulations to the trust there. So the city is responsible to fund the trust and has done that through three distinct mechanisms. And again, we'll talk through each. And as you can see, the plan design is strong, but the fund itself has also seen significant growth over the past 10 years through these city contributions and presently stands about $34 million today.
Just have one note on it, if we go back to that last slide.
Sure.
In terms of revenue or even cost reductions, the cancer PTSI costs that are considered by workers' comp, we don't view that as revenue. It's determined to be a medical issue that was caused as in the course of work. Workers' comp pays, and it's discovered, then the subrogation process occurs. We are, if it happens to hit our stop loss, they will negotiate and with the providers reduce the bills, but eventually our trust will get a revenue. But it's not something that we count on as a consistent, repeatable, budgetable revenue source.
And I think that's all true and fair, but I think it's equally important to understand how those costs shifted. What was the case prior to 2016 and 2019, and where those costs shifted to understand what was covered at the trust, under the trust at one time, which is now covered under a different fund. It's not as much what the revenue is coming into the fund today as much as understanding how costs have shifted. And I want to talk through that so that we understand what those shifted costs look like. Okay. All right, so first and foremost, the trust is funded through per employee per month contributions, very typical. I will say that I was a little surprised. It's a bit unique to see that there is no tiered model. Generally, when you're looking at plan design and determining how your per employee per month contributions are going to look, you're looking at elections. Am I single? Am I a single with a spouse? Do I have children, or am I a family? And then you ultimately look at those contributions differently. So ultimately, the per employee per month contribution is flat for every member, regardless of whether they're family, whether they're single, whether they have children or not, which I do think has been a contributing factor to really setting excellent level of benefits. So then secondly, in 2011, the city began contributing in the form of a rate stabilization funding based on a percentage of employee salaries. This has also been a significant funding component to the trust. Overall, the city of Boise has contributed $21 million to the trust, with the rate stabilization fund balance growing to just at $9 million within the trust. So getting a little bit more specific to the workers' compensation question. So of course, legislation in 2016 and 2019 changed and, like I said, shifted costs from the trust, which were being covered by the trust at that point. Anybody that had a type of a cancer illness, a specific type of cancer illness, or also, again, 2019 PTSI. At the time, those were being covered under the benefit plan. In 2016, 2019, respectively, those shifted to the workers' comp fund. And I think it's important just to note what that funding really means. So to date, you can see there have been 8 instances or claimants who have needed support for cancer illness, and the total incurred cost that was, again, under the funding under the trust that has now shifted to the workers' comp has been about $5.5 million incurred, and respectively, there have been 26 PTSI claimants supported with a total incurred cost of $1.8 million. I think it's also important to note that our self-insured retention rate, because we are now taking that on under workers' comp, has increased significantly as well. And essentially what that means is prior we were paying the rate of $500,000 for each claim, which essentially means the city is responsible for each claim up to $500,000 before insurance will kick in. That increased because of these shifts with both the cancer and the PTSI to $2 million per claim. So now the city is now responsible to pay $2 million up front for each claim prior to the insurance kicking in. And to your point, it is not a revenue piece, but it is very significant in terms of how the funds both work. And with that, I'm going to shift it to Eric.
Okay. Thanks, Stacy. I'm going to do an overview of the city's overall financial condition. Much of this information was presented as part of this past budget development process, various city council sessions, as well as through discussions around the police collective labor agreement. So the first thing, I just want to zoom out a little bit, and we're going to look at the 10-year forecast for the city. And if you look at the line chart on the right-hand side, you see two lines. The green line representing known costs for existing service levels, existing positions that are authorized by the city council. And we do our best to project all revenues and all expenses, again, based on kind of our base case existing scenario. And we project that we will be able to support all of those costs with the cost increases. However, when you look at the orange line, that line represents what the financial condition could look like if we added the average number of positions that we've added over the prior 10 years. So over the prior 10 years, we've added 28.7 positions per year. Looking at the current complement of positions across the organization, if you were to add, kind of pro rata, you would add 17.7 general employee positions, 11 public safety positions. And when you look at that, you see that we go negative pretty quickly. So I think the punchline here is that the city can cover current costs and growth associated with current costs. However, when you look at increased staffing demands associated with growth in the community, that becomes much more difficult to sustain. Looking at the overall kind of budget balancing environment, this was a slide we used throughout this budget development cycle. Looking at some of the larger categories, on the left-hand side, you see revenue, sales tax, liquor tax, property tax. Those are our three primary general sources of revenue. And on the right-hand side, you can see expenditure growth, general employee costs, public safety employee costs, essential capital costs, insurance, PERSI, and software. And generally, the theme is that expenditure growth is outpacing revenue. You can see that there are some categories that are very difficult to actually impact: sales tax, liquor tax, PERSI, some of our insurance costs, capital contributions. Some of those are beyond city's control. When we look at our overall revenue picture, approximately 73% of general fund revenues are available for city operations. That would include property tax, sales tax, liquor tax, and franchise fees. Another 24% of our overall general fund revenue is strictly reimbursement based, and that would include departmental revenue, our development fees, and internal charges. So approximately a quarter of our revenue is not available for needs outside of those three categories. And then there's another much smaller category, about 3%, that is one-time in nature or is not generally considered as a revenue source for budget balancing. And that would include fines and forfeitures, some of our other revenue, and then carry forward fund balance. Primary reason for that is that these categories are very difficult to predict. In the instance of carry forward and fund balance, fines and forfeitures we do not count. That is more of a compliance-based category versus a revenue generation and budget balancing approach. And then within other revenue, you'll see things like grants, interest earnings that shift from year to year. As we look at expenditures by department, you can see public safety, and this would be the combined police, fire, Office of Police Accountability, and criminal prosecution costs, making up the overwhelming majority of city expenses. Next largest categories being our Parks and Recreation departments and our support departments. You can see that the public safety category did grow from fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 26. When we look at the overall general fund budget, approximately 70% of the overall budget is dedicated towards personnel. I'll dive into some subcategories within that in just a moment. About 19% is non-personnel. That would be things like supplies, fuel, things of that nature. We have another 7% that is dedicated towards transfers. That is primarily dedicated towards our capital improvement fund. We transfer tax resources out of the general fund into our capital improvement fund to support things like parks, libraries, police and fire facilities, as well as all of our equipment and major repairs. And then we have about 3% of our budget dedicated to Valley Regional Transit. Most expenses within the general fund are ongoing and are increasing each year. And as mentioned on a previous slide, many costs that are rising are outside the city's control. Things like PERSI, and then other items which I didn't call out on that prior slide, like rent, fuel, and equipment. Zooming in a little bit on that personnel, you can see that of the 71%, or $234 million out of the budget, approximately 60%, 58% is dedicated towards salaries. Another 18% is dedicated towards health insurance. Just under that, 15% dedicated towards retirement and post-employment. And then the smaller categories you can see up at the top: overtime, temp and rec wages, one-time compensation, and other various expenses. We have seen personnel costs rise quite a bit in recent years. If we go back to fiscal year 2020, personnel costs exceeded property tax revenue by 2.3%. We like to tag growth to property tax because that is the single greatest revenue category within the general fund. By fiscal year 2026, that gap will have grown to 14.4%. That gap was driven by a couple of different things. Cumulative FTE growth required to service the community, as well as rising personnel related costs, salary and benefits. That trend we expect to be unsustainable without new revenue sources or cost reductions. You can see the annual growth rate on the right-hand side for personnel costs at 5.74% versus property tax at 4.49%. Looking at base salary growth, we have averaged about 4.6% growth over the last several years for police, 5% for fire, and then 3% for general employees. One of the categories I mentioned was growth within PERSI costs. PERSI is the retirement system here in Idaho. We would expect that by fiscal year 2029, PERSI costs will exceed the 2025 budgeted levels by more than $6.5 million, approximately a 32% increase. PERSI growth is one of the largest pressures on the long-term budget forecast, and you can see a steady upward trajectory in those costs. Just some overall themes when we look at cost growth. Again, tying back to that 3% year-over-year increase, which is what we are bound on property tax. We're seeing many essential city services rising faster than that 3% level. If we look at software, average costs are up 80% since 2017 to 2019. Fuel costs, average costs are 50% higher than 2017 to 2019. And then insurance, which Stacy was alluding to or referenced earlier, costs are about 80% higher than 2017 to 2019. PERSI, we are projecting steady increases. I will note that in May of 2025, the PERSI board did reduce and defer some of those increases. However, they still the reduced levels are still built into our forecast and were contributing factors to that prior slide. And then general fund contributions to the capital fund, we have been steadily working to increase contributions to our capital fund due to overwhelming cost increases that we've seen within that fund. We have one summary slide, but before we hand it over to Courtney, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
I think we just wanted to some that we are proud to take care of our employees and to ensure strong benefits. We wanted to go over the 3 different ways we're contributing to public safety employees and again, just touch on how well your benefit plan is doing, particularly on the medical side. And I think that was all we had for a summary. I just want to make sure you guys don't have any more questions for these 2 before I let them go.
I think does merit clarification that the rate stabilization fund, this, call it as a funding mechanism to the trust. The history, you may not be aware, but when we negotiated the first trust contract, at the time, police and fire, we had post-employment health plans. So because we retire around 55, 56, we had to make that gap to Medicare. And at the time, the city was considered a blended rate. So the actives helped reduce what the retirees were paying. But it was still, to stay on the city's insurance was difficult at best, very expensive. And our members were finding, a lot of them who were in the plan had difficulty finding plans outside of the city because of pre-existing conditions. So the PHP was how we were going to fund that gap. And then when we negotiated the trust, we initially talked about a MERP, medical expense reimbursement plan, that we could operate within the trust. And that would be more of a defined benefit plan. In the end, we came up with the rate stabilization fund, so we gave up a contract raise in 2011. Actually, it was October 1st, 2010. We were both had agreed to a contract raise that we decided to forego. It was 2.5% for us, 3% for the police. And we added it to the 2% that was going into the PHP to become the rate stabilization, which we envision is, instead of a defined benefit plan where we're paying members and they can buy their premiums, is that we're going to help reduce those premiums in retirement through the rate stabilization fund. So that money is, even though it's all under the guise of the Boise Fire and Police Trust, that fund represents our members' own investment, giving up the raise and taking the 2% that's formerly going into PHP, which is now the MERP. So we view that as a separate and distinct fund, and that's used for retiree insurance. It's about 1/3 of the trust, and the rest is for benefits.
Jim, do you know why it was called a rate stabilization fund? Because I'm a bit literal in this space. I don't see that you guys have a need for a rate stabilization fund. So I know we've been back and forth on some of the language in the past, but do you know why that term was used originally?
I think it was essentially flip of the coin, because initially we called it the retiree reserve. And then one of our attorneys suggested that the Department of Insurance may have an issue with that. And at the same time, we were solving the city's GASB issue. And they wanted to take retiree all the way out of it so that there was no confusing issue in terms of the GASB accounting standard. So I think that's what we did our rate stabilization. We're not married to it. No, I think it was only real note. So
Good, Courtney.
Okay,
Yeah, you guys are.
yeah, no more questions. Let me go. So I don't know if there's any more discussion to be had around that history that's helpful to understand. Uh, as we're looking at it, and one of the things that was in the slide was there is a significant difference in the amount that's accumulated. And several of you are much closer to that issue in terms of how that's grown over time, what the needs are. From where we sit, it looks like it's a very well-funded plan. And I think the question from our side is it appropriate to keep it moving on that same trend line, or is it more appropriate to have it flatten out a little bit? Not, of course, we're not looking to, I mean, you all control the benefits, of course. And I think as you've heard here today, the city wants to make sure that it's providing funds that allow for good quality benefits. But we also we must be, in light of the financial situation, kind of responsible and prudent about how we're doing that. So that's a little bit of the conversation that I think we want to have as part of this process. The other way that we were looking at it, because of that question about rate stabilization, is that really what it is? Should we not just make it a single contribution? And I'd love to hear, from you in terms of what your view is on that. But that's kind of how we're looking at it. We don't know what this is necessarily, so maybe it's just one sum would be appropriate.
Got it. Well, I mean, that leads us to. Slide a proposal across. Yeah.
It's so hard for me to get used to you using paper again. I'm not sure. I've done one of these with actual paper.
I'm old school.
I like the paper for the record. Otherwise, I have to operate a computer and drag and drop. Okay.
Can you walk us through this?
You got it. And understanding that the rate stabilization fund is a head scratcher to people who aren't intimate with it. We brainstormed on some ideas, but our proposal is to shift it, calling it the post-service health reserve, which just essentially capture what we use those funds for. And so, before we set it up the trust, we had actuaries study what are going to be the big years of expenses, and what are we going to need to help buy down some of those premiums. And it's from like 2021 through 2031 is where our members are going to be in that window between retirement and Medicare. It's going to be the most expensive, and we have seen that we're what's coming in the rate stabilization fund, we are deficit spending on right now, on a monthly basis. And is what that fund is used for. Like I said, we wanted to replace the post-employment health plan. Rather than having a benefit that's paid out or reimbursed, we'll buy down the premiums up front in retirement. And retirees, even me, tell you that even with that, it's pretty expensive on a monthly basis. So we included the history, those raises that were foregone, and why we believe that accounting for it in one single payment would not, our members wouldn't agree with, because of the long history of the raises they gave up and what we formerly had another negotiated benefit, the 10%, the THP, that is currently going in to that fund that will help make their retirements healthcare somewhat affordable.
Okay, and so I guess what is the proposal as it relates to service health reserve, which is the new name under this proposal for the rate stabilization fund?
That is, yeah, the proposal is just the name change.
Gotcha.
And you have the current MOA.
Yes.
Yeah, and that I didn't reference the exact point in the MOA where that comes from. But it's right after the contributions to the trust in Part D of the MOA.
Do you also have a proposal for the other aspect of the trust?
In terms of just the medical expense fund.
Or the, whatever the other entity is that we pay into, just the basic contribution to the healthcare trust.
I don't have the changes to contributions available yet, so
Okay.
we will have something.
I mean, I think we'll need to see that in conjunction with this. I mean, I recognize this is just a name change, but the financial impact we have to evaluate, obviously. This is just something I don't know the answer to. Maybe everybody else here does, but when the city contributes to currently the rate stabilization fund, does that go into I'm gonna use a really basic term because I don't know how it all works, but just into a separate account?
Yeah.
And sits separately in an account that's specific to the post-service medical benefit?
Yeah.
What is the balance? Do you know the balance of that account?
It's right around 10 million.
I think what I'm struggling with, not being part of the history and not being an expert on healthcare trusts, is why there is a carve out. It makes the city a bit uncomfortable to have two contributions, because it kind of puts us in your business. Does that make sense? Like, a single contribution would just release the money to all of you to do what it is you want to do with it. I still can't figure out why historically in that negotiation it wasn't a single contribution, because we don't have any insight or transparency into how the post-service health reserve interacts with the other element of this. Only you guys have that. So I'm still a bit confused why the city has any role in a separate designated fund, right? In the past, did you guys discuss a single contribution to keep the benefits whole for the rate stabilization fund? Or was it always ever considered separate?
Always kept separate because it will ebb and flow with how contracts is based off of the standard rate. But our members, they want to see that their sacrifice, okay, we're going to give up this raise, these contractually guaranteed raises, and that PHP, so that for our membership, it's important for them to see that there is that separate fund, that we're not overspending it, so that when someone
I got 18 and a half years ago.
okay, Josh is
He's
there,
a youngster.
that we can still buy down his premiums. It's important for us to maintain the two, so that our members have an idea that, wow, Jim's in retirement now. He's in that window. They were spending it down to nothing. So by the time I get there, there won't be anything left. So for accountability of our membership, and for the purposes of managing it with the Department of Insurance, it has to be part of the trust, even though maintain a separate fund. Because it's a little more difficult to have it as a separate outside of the trust and manage differently, where we can, as a trust board, make the decisions. And how much we're going to pay in on a monthly basis.
So if that's the case, why can't the trust manage as is and distribute the city's contribution as you wish? Does that make sense?
It does. I just, if it came in as a single payment, we'd still then, if it came in, we'd divide it into the two.
Sure. Or whatever else you wanted to do, right?
So explain to me again why the city, this is important to the city, to have it as one payment.
It's just, it feels like it's more straightforward, given that our role in the healthcare trust is just as a contributor. It seems a bit strange that then there's a secondary fund that we don't have any transparency or insight into. Like, we either gotta be we've gotta either be part of your trust or not part of your trust. These are my words. And this feels like this weird, you all are delivering fantastic benefits for your folks. You can designate this money any way you want. It seems strange that we would have a contract that would limit a fund, it limit you in any way by designating any funds. Does that make sense? Like, we really see that as the purview of you all as the trustees, not the city micromanaging or getting into the nuances of your stuff. I mean, I don't know what the future holds, but there could be one day where you don't want to do this. You guys should be able to move this money anywhere you want, right?
Yeah, I mean, from our viewpoint, it's much like the 2% match into the 401k. The city does contributes and funds that, but it has no transparency or no view look into how someone's investing the funds or operating or what they're doing with those funds. But yeah, that is, I think, the key point of it is our members look at it as an account we set up and sacrifice. But you all know how difficult it is to get people to save for their retirements. And you have to educate them and bring them along. And they look at that as a separate retirement account, even though it's under the guise of the trust. They know how much is in there, how much we're buying on them. I mean, I guess if there's a way that we could still get accounting for it, but we may have to calculate something.
Oh, that's fine. I'm curious about the background, but back to your 2% in an IRA, my example in my mind that matches this one is us giving 2% in someone's IRA and then another 0.5% to do something else in their IRA. Like, that is my example. It's the spin-off as opposed to just the contribution to the trust to do what you all will. But it's just a concept. I encourage you guys to talk about it.
Yeah, should we do that now?
Yeah,
Sure.
I think
Just how about I call it back at 9:45?
sounds good.
Anyway, break.
We discussed it a little further and appreciate for streamline for council decisions and budgeting that a single payment works well for that process. From our perspective, it's for our members to have the confidence in their retirements that there's a fund there that they didn't give up their PHP for without reason. They still have a retirement, an avenue to help them in retirement. That's so there's two sides. We understand where we've come from. We understand where we're coming from. We view it as when the city was paying into the city's trust when we were a part of it and into the PHP. Essentially, it is the same thing, having two payments. Although in this case, both those payments go to our trust, but one's in that post-service health reserve.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Historically, it's always been two payments, right? It's always been one payment to the current insurance and the other payment to post-employment health plan. We've just changed the name now to rate stabilization fund and now to post-service health reserve. We can call it whatever we need to call it. It's always been two payments for the history of everything.
So how does that work? I mean, I hear what you're saying about people wanting to understand that there's, these funds that are allocated toward the buy down, and knowing that money is going to be there. I guess a couple of questions. One, what if the trust were to find itself in a position that that portion, that fund was really well funded and the other side was somewhat underfunded? Does the trust have the ability to shift funds as between those two buckets?
No, they're accounted for separately. The way it works now is we designate how much we're going to buy down the retiree rates.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount that's coming in is, we're deficit spending right now. So we've subsidized more than what we have in the account. So the account's fine now.
So tell me more about that. Your deficit spending. So are you saying that the fund is being reduced currently through spending?
So what comes in on a monthly basis is less than what we're using to buy down the premiums. And
By how much? You know,
I don't. I can find out though. Yeah, but those funds are never commingled and used to pay trust expenses. They're strictly brought in addition to what we receive in return.
What is the prohibition of mixing the funds? Is that just a governance structure on your side?
Yeah, like I said, our members want to know that fund
Oh, sure.
is still there, and now do they get invested in the same type of funds? Yes, but they're accounted for separately.
What I understand too, right, and a little bit of the impasse because we're waiting for more information on the proposal. Do you guys have anything proposed?
well, I think given that we have this proposal, it's hard for us to evaluate. I mean, I know it's just a name change, but there's also a financial impact. So it's hard for us to evaluate without having the other proposals that have some sort of financial impact to evaluate the proposal and figure out where we need to go. So I think
So always the brightest, but what financial impact is there from this name change?
You kept the rate at 4.5.
If I may, that rate though was set in place because we gave up those raises and the post-employment health plan. So that we're not talking about changing. That rate came from those percentages that we gave up in the past. So that's why they've been moved forward perpetually.
I understand that. I can tell you the city is in a position to negotiate it now, though. It's not cemented somewhere. This is a healthcare trust negotiation, and I think we're trying to determine how much the city is going to contribute, and we have retained flexibility in this negotiation. So it would be helpful for us to get an understanding of the total financial impact of what you're asking the city to do. So I see the 4%. What are the other pieces? The 4.5% for the rate stabilization fund. What are the other pieces?
You obviously had something in mind in terms of this language and the contributions. Do you have a proposal by us then?
no, I think what you heard from us was we were looking at this conceptually as, like Courtney explained, we don't understand why the contributions are separate, and shouldn't the city just be concerned with the total contribution that it's making, especially if the trust has the ability on the back end to allocate it appropriately. But that's the trust's job, the trustee's role to do that. And so we don't have a proposal other than to say we would like to have a conversation, which we're having now, about a single contribution as opposed to the separate contributions that the structure that we currently have. So I guess, hearing post caucus that, the trust likes it the way it is. I think we'd still be looking to have the conversation around, can we not still combine these so that the trust can do as it needs to and as is appropriate for all of its participants. We'd be still looking to have that discussion. But point being, we need the full financial impact, regardless of whether it's one payment or multiple payments.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have that prepared would be something we could put together.
That's great.
Yeah, so we'll probably have to caucus again.
How
Okay.
long do you need?
You want the real number or the time we're gonna actually show up?
There, actually are gonna kill
Give us a
He's checking in at 30 minutes.
Sure, yeah, so you can just let us know if you want to set it for 30 now.
Should
I
we
would
go
have
down
said-
into the-
Yeah, we can.
Computers
Yep, that's a
downstairs?
good idea.
Yeah, we're gonna go down to the. We had a chance to discuss. I think everybody agrees that the perception of the raises that were used to fund the plan, the post-employment health plan, our membership is just because they pay attention to it and they know it's there for them. That the name change is one thing, but combining and not being able to see that those are two different story. But we did put together the contribution, our proposal contribution changes.
Thank you.
Can you just speak to this, Jim?
Yeah, so two things of note. First, it poses a 6-year term. And a 3% increase to the PEPM contributions for all of 6 years. And table on the second page, that whole table needs to go in, and we threw in our language change to the rate stabilization fund.
I might have missed it if you said it. I'm just looking at the first paragraph. So the change in the contribution January 2026, that stated amount, what percent is that increase?
3%.
3. Gotcha. Thanks.
Jim, currently this says January 2026 and continuing 1st 2026. Did you mean like?
I think that's the fixed amount just for next
Yeah.
year, and then down below it would pick up the future years. I think that's how I read that.
Yeah. A couple of attorneys crafted this back in the day, so we can blame them for.
2031.
Yeah.
I will say I really appreciate the 3% offer. I understand that is a lower rate than the city has looked at in the past, so I do appreciate those efforts on your half. Paul, do you have any questions?
No, I think I understand the proposal.
And do you want this electronically too? Would that help?
I'm working on getting a city computer to be able to put it in the iDrive for you, so.
Oh, great.
For lunch, I should be able to.
Okay.
Electronically, if that's something you guys are interested in.
Yeah.
I noticed you abandoned your laptops.
Did you?
We know where they are. You know where they
Well,
are.
that you would have known I was just surfing the web instead of doing some negotiations.
How long do you want to caucus for?
I think we'll need 30
Can we
minutes.
just go ahead and make it 11:30? Sure.
Yeah. Great.
We'll go back. We should probably. Yes.
Ready?
Yep.
Okay, so we printed a copy of the ground rules, so I'll just pass those back now so you can have a look. We've signed, everything looks correct to us, so if you want to sign those, we'll get a copy back to you. Great, thanks. All right, thank you for your patience while we did some work on it. I know we kept extending, so appreciate the flexibility. So we have a response to the proposal, and let me sort of just give you it verbally to start with. The city is willing to agree to the proposal that you passed this morning, with just a couple of modifications. One is after we heard the explanation about the rate stabilization fund, how it worked, how you all manage that internally, we would like to keep that name. So we would like not to rename it. We would like to keep rate stabilization fund. Modification 2 would be to update the dates that are in the MOA right now regarding the provisions in place when we get to the end of the period and the procedure that we have in place for renegotiation, and a continuation of the PEPM, and our proposed modification, since the proposal, consistent with the proposal being 3%, that it would automatically roll at 3% into, I can't believe we're talking about dates like this, 2032. And those are the two modifications that we have. I'll pass to you a draft that just has the updated dates. And the updated, I pulled in your the PEPM rate that would be in effect as of December 31, 2031. And I think between the proposal that you passed and this response, it would have all of the changes contained in these two pieces of paper that we need to implement into an updated memorandum of agreement.
So there was no other changes. It was next easy. We're focused on things. So we will sorry, just got back together, but we'll caucus for a little bit.
Sure.
Sure.
Okay.
About how long do you think? Maybe just have to put it on the screen.
Oh,
That's fine.
1:30.
Okay. Thank you.
Here's a copy of the ground rules that's signed by both sides.
Appreciate the work on this and the ability to impressed upon you what membership thinks about that stabilization fund. It's not changing that. We appreciate the work there. The only thing that we would like to do in terms of a TA is just because we don't have the table laid out, if we could include the new table.
Oh,
as part of the TA and
Mhm.
these together. We're ready to do that.
Okay. And is that table is just the one that was contained in the prior proposal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Need it? Oh, need it.
Not that I don't trust you, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't look at the table before we signed it.
Do you guys have a time estimate on potential ratification? Just so I can figure out the council side of this.
So we, by our rules, and I think you guys are similar. I think our post, we could probably have it as early.
Can't keep track of this.
We have a meeting on Wednesday, and I believe it's gonna be, has to be open for 2 weeks to be voted on.
Are you
Yeah,
guys 2 weeks too?
Yeah, post for 15 days, I believe it's 15 days and oh, immediately after that.
So that's maybe the week of, are you thinking September 8th?
Yeah, we should be able to complete that. You've run some of the last few votes.
To get it on the council meeting on the 16th, I would need it by the 10th,
Okay.
just so you know.
If
And if you miss it, then I need it by the 17th or the 23rd.
you know,
I think we can get the
16
text.
should be doable.
We're saying the 16th then? Well,
If you can't get it, just let me know, because we'll just push it a week.
16th, you know, if it's an evening or a day.
The 16th is the Wednesday before the evening meeting. We set the agendas on the Wednesday before the Tuesday. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So to get on the 23rd, I need it by the 16th.
Okay.
That makes sense. And if you miss it, then you gotta wait a week, so. But we don't have a council meeting the day after Labor Day, so.
Okay.
I think that gives you a little extra time.
Yeah.
I think the day meeting is probably on the 30th. What's the 23rd?
Yeah, we should be able to handle that.
Okay. Anything else?
I mean, President Shuey and Jones mentioned that there was some desire in the city's health trust to learn some of our best practices and wanted to make sure we offered that.
I do think the city intends to provide you all with an annual report of the workers' comp claims. Because if we don't provide you that information, you won't have it. So just so you can see what's happening in the cancer space and PTSI.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, because we checked with the states, our state organization, and asked how many presumptive cancer cases they were aware of. And so it was a lot fewer than the 8 that was shown. So we'd be just interested to know if there was.
Yeah, I mean, I bet we can't tell you any more than the number and the amounts, but we can do that. You just, if there's a specific time of year that works better with your governance, just let me know. If not, we'll just pick a date and do it every year.
Yeah. Call it for an annual meeting or annual.
Oh, just a report of the workers' comp claims associated with the presumptive cancer and the PTSI.
Okay.
Because when I talked to Jason, it was clear we have more claims than you guys were aware of.
Correct.
And you just might want to know that from whatever other protections you might want to put in place.
Would the city ever be interested in having the unions run a press for work comp?
No. Any other questions, Jeff? All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.